Good. So we are going to be live in about 10 seconds.
Great.
Let me just pick up the live stream on my phone quickly. Right. So I think if you look at the Zoom screen, does it say we're live?
It says recording live on Facebook. Yes, the meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Then that's where we are. Hello, everybody. If you're on Facebook Live, then I will be with you in just a moment. This is that famous part of the show where you see the crown of my head as I am looking down, trying my best to pick up the live stream. There it is. And I already see the first few people are there on the live stream. Hello, everybody. I've got the wonderful Dr. Joe Delaney with me. I'm so excited to find out about this wonderful man. Oh, and I've got feedback. So sorry, audio feedback, not very smart of me. And of course, my name is Kerry Kay. And if this is the first time you're tuning into my show, then you're going to meet me for the first time. I speak from the heart. My show is called Voices of the Heart. And I do this crazy thing like hosting wonderful people like Dr. Joe, because I really believe that there are so many people out there with so many wonderful messages. And I want to share them. I want to get all of these people on one stage, one platform, one voice, one heart, and allow them to speak to you. And I know where they speak from. They speak from their hearts. And when that happens, they speak directly to your heart, and then miracles transpire. It was my beautiful friend Rosie Neal who said to me, "Oh, you should have Dr. Joe on." And that's all I need. If Rosie says, "You got to have somebody on," I go, okay, because I know that she knows heart consciousness when she meets it. So, Dr. Joe, I've got your bio in front of me, and I could easily read it. But I would love for you, please, to do us the honor of introducing yourself, imagining that you're introducing yourself to people who really haven't heard Dr. Joe, or if they have heard Dr. Joe before, there's some things that they don't know about him. I would love for you to please introduce yourself to us.
Thank you, Kerry, and it's lovely to meet you. And
Thank you.
from one moment to the next, to be honest, I've got no idea what's going to come out of my mouth, so be afraid.
Good. I'm afraid. Okay, thanks
Yeah.
for the warning.
So I'm Dr. Joe. I'm not a doctor of medicine, but I'm a doctor in medicine. And what that simply means is I've got a PhD in a medical subject. And it just so happens that I spent 7 years experimenting, if you like, and looking at different people's states of mind and mood states and analyzing the way their heart works according to those different mood states. And what I found out over that time, it's called heart rate variability. And there's an organization called Heart Math,
Yeah.
and I use a lot of their equipment now because right at the end of my PhD, I was introduced to their equipment and it's absolutely marvelous. And what I've found is I use a phrase, hacking physiology to change psychology. And really, it turns the world of psychology upside down into a more transpersonal sort of psychology. I know some big words will come out here, but I'll be glad to sort of explain them in different ways to help people. But my understanding is that if you can change your breathing, so use mindful breathing and positive emotion in a certain way, you can start to change the way your brain waves work. Your brain waves determine the actions you take, and the actions you take determine the quality or the lack of quality of your life. And I used to be a very complex sort of a person and think I knew what I was talking about. And looking back, I'll say I didn't have a bloody clue, to be quite honest with you. I knew lots and lots about biomedicine. I knew lots about how the heart works and about hematology and all these sorts of things. And I was really, very, very arrogant in my knowledge. And I sort of tried to build on more and more knowledge and use that as a front to hide my emotional insecurity and immaturity. And I see that now, and I'm not going to knock myself, but looking back, I can see clearly what I was up to. I was always trying to impress people because I felt so desperately insecure in myself. And it wasn't, what happened was at the age of 17, I left college and I got a job in the local pathology department, washing test tubes. And I loved everything to do with medicine, health, helping people and stuff. And because I was enthusiastic about it, I learned very rapidly. And the more I learned, the more I got promoted. And it took me away from what I really loved, and that was working with people and research. I absolutely love research and working with people. But as I sort of climbed the ladder of so called success, made more money, got bigger job titles, and became more important, right? Things started to go wrong. I got more and more stressed. And I found that if I had a certain amount of alcohol, it made me feel more relaxed, right? So as the years went on and the stress increased, the amount of alcohol I took to get that relaxed feeling increased as well. And you know the story. It then went into anxiety and panic attacks, and anxiety. And not a lot of people know this. Angustia, the root word of anxiety, means a tightening or a narrowing of the throat, and that's why people get that grip in the throat when they're under stress, because it's part of what's called a fight or flight response. So as the years went on, as I say, the panic attacks got worse. I went from alcohol then, I started to smoke, and then from there it got worse and worse and worse. I started to take high powered medications then from the doctor, and also under the counter medications as well. Anything at all to make me feel different. Because when I felt different, my mind changed and temporarily it gave me some relief. Am I all right to carry on with the story
Oh,
so
please
far?
do. Yeah, please go.
Okay, and as the years went on, the people around me used to say to me, Joe, if you carry on like this, you're going to have a nervous breakdown. And I didn't understand what they were talking about, because I used to say to my wife, I don't know what you're talking about. We're having 3 holidays a year. We've got loads of money. We've got 2 cars. We've got a big posh house. I don't know what more you want. And they were trying to help me because they could see what I couldn't see myself. And Kerry, we've already alluded to this in our little pre sort of conversation. Um, when you're in denial, you really don't know you're in denial. Everybody else can clearly see it, but it's the thing that I was hiding from most,
Yeah.
and that I was afraid, that I was like a little child in a big man's body, terrified of the world. And so I got a whole raft of qualifications. I could paper the bedroom wall with my qualifications, and how knowledgeable I was. But the truth about it was, about myself, I didn't have a clue. Anyway, cut a long story short, people said to me, I used to go and see the doctor, and he said, if you carry on like this, you're going to lose your job. If you carry on like this, you're going to lose your wife and kids. If you carry on like this, and I couldn't understand what they were saying to me. Who are you people? What are you talking about? Anyway, I lost my job. I lost my wife and kids. I lost my driving license. I lost my liberty. I lost my home. I ended up homeless. And in the end, I got to a point where I was that desperate. I was hurting that many people that I knelt down, and I wasn't in touch with God or such things at the time, but I knelt down and I just said to this God thing, I said, look, I'm hurting so many people. Can you help me now to make this an end? And I took a whole load of sleeping tablets and paracetamol and everything, a cocktail that should have seen off an elephant, really. And as I was sort of going down and sinking deep into this state of relaxation, this sort of feeling, it must have been the peace that passeth all understanding, it descended upon me. And for a moment, and I don't know whether it was a minute or an hour or a year, I don't know. But in that moment, I understood everything. It was almost like a whole load of ciphers and numbers and codes and all sorts of visions and everything came to me. And for a moment, I understood everything about how the universe worked. And then I got a really strong feeling, because I said then, thank you so much. And I could feel myself going, right. And then I got this feeling then, it was like another alcoholic epileptic fit. And I started to have another fit. I was by myself at the time. But I got the feeling that something said to me, or gave me a strong message, son, if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have signed up for this.
Oh my
And I
God.
thought, this is a very strange time to be telling me things like this. So the, the impression I got was that I was turned around, and I got this feeling of, son, you actually asked for this. You asked for this,
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about soul contracts then and all this, but it was almost like at the gates of insanity and death, I was
Yeah.
turned round and I got the feeling that something kicked me up the bottom and said, "Go on then, show them how it's done, but we'll guide you through the process." And Kerry, that was nearly 28 years ago. And
Wow.
since then, every morning, before I open my eyes, I open my heart and I say, "What are we up to today?" Because that's me and my higher power or my soul self or whatever. And I know that we're already one, I know that feeling of unification and unity, but I just get a sense of that my ego has to say in the morning, "Show me what you want me to do today." And my honest belief is that every single day there is a role for me to play, and I need to tune into that role and take action based upon the guidance that comes from my soul, maybe a soul's role or something like that. Anyway, and that's where I am today. My life has been transformed by listening in to my deep heart, my heart of hearts, my soul. Do I get it wrong? Yeah, I get it wrong every flaming minute of the day, but I'm okay. I let myself off the hook all the time now. I don't knock myself, because if I can, hand on heart, if I can say to my son, because I talk to myself like this: "Son, are you doing the best you can?" "Yeah." "Good enough, carry on."
Mm.
And so that's the story
Mhm.
up to now. Please feel free to ask anything. I'll be glad to try
Wow.
and.
Well, before I ask you anything, I need to tell you that you said something earlier. You said you were trying to impress people in your old life. You were
Yeah,
trying to impress people and sort of hiding behind the facade of of what you knew, your credentials, the egoic stuff. I get that. But I have to tell you, you just impressed me beyond. And I know that that's not your intention. I know that's not why you're so honest. But I don't know when last somebody introduced themselves to me and just stopped me in my tracks the way that you have. It's so admirable when somebody dares to be honest about who they are and what they feel. And they go, "Here I am, look at me, I'm just human." And in that just humanness, there is their divinity, there is their God self, there is their heart open and available for all to see. I respect that. I admire that. I think you are phenomenal from what you have told me, where you have come to where you are now. I know I've said this before in a previous show, and I don't remember who it was with, but it's astounding to me how few people there are who are living testimonies of having an old life that if we were to look at it now, we would go, "Oh, that person, they're probably not going to wake up." And yet here you are, having awoken and awake enough to know that you're still awaking, as we all are. Wow, that's a big wow moment for me.
Thanks. Thank you for what you said. And, I don't feel like that. I think I've got no idea what's going on. I'm like, from one moment to the next, I've not a bloody clue.
Oh my God.
I just
Yeah.
feel my way through life now. And
Yeah.
one of the parts in my recovery from the alcoholism side of things, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
always be recovering from that, because it's little to do with the alcohol.
Mm,
It's a soul sickness, and by that what I mean is it's almost like a psychopathology, for want of a better word.
mm,
But
mm,
it's the soul wasn't sick; the soul was just bound up
mm,
by these ego chains, these attachments,
mm,
and I see now that in order to allow the soul to be free and to embody itself and express itself through the physical body, then we have to focus on the physicality and listen in intently to any clues that the physical body is trying to show us. And I think that when people are open and flowing and in love, there's no
mm,
pain, it's just a complete expression of just joy. However, when ego sort of attaches to something because of some perceived threat, there's
mm,
always a little clue in the body. And this is what I do now, based upon my experience now and what I've learned myself. I try and help people, first of all, to tune into their soul and to reconnect with their essential selves, and
mm,
also to try and get a sense of what part of them most plays a part in the fight and flight response. when they go on the defensive, what part of their body grips first and foremost? Now, some people grip in their head, they get very head dominated. Some people are very strained in their eyes. A very common one is the jaw. They get this thing called temporomandibular joint tension. And there are people who grind their teeth in their sleep and stuff like this. Now, the jaw response is one of the strongest responses in the human because it's part of our animal nature. And it's this, I'll bite your throat out. You see, it's part of that. And because we're so polite
Yeah.
in this society, we
Yeah.
feel the tension, but then we probably say, oh, it's lovely to see you. You know that one, right? When really, but the whole. And so I love it, you see, because because I've been there, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You get to sense people at a deeper level, and you
Mm.
can pick up all these non-verbal communications.
Oh yeah.
I mean, people used to call that psychic, but I just think it's being more sensitive to
Yeah.
expressions and things. So yeah, but a very common one at the moment is tension around the throat.
Mm.
Where people have suppressed and repressed and been oppressed or allowed themselves to be oppressed, and they've closed down their throat and not expressed themselves fully through an
Mm.
open throat and an open heart. So I try and help people with things like primal screaming and dancing and chanting and singing and all those things, almost taking them back to a time
Mm.
before they were conditioned and programmed into
Mm.
miserableness, really.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I remember, Dr. Joe, I used to work with primates. I used to work with baboons in a rehabilitation sanctuary. And I cannot begin to tell you how much they taught me about the nature of the primate being. And one of them is the smile. And when they're threatened and they want to show another baboon that they're not going to fight, they're going to behave themselves, they do this. We do it as well. It's the fake smile. They do, and it's not a smile where the corners of the mouth come up. It's really that. And then there's the oh, but I'll go there if you want me to, and you'll watch how the head comes forward, and then it's
Yeah.
and then you'll see if the mouth opens. So there's so much. There is so much that you can tell just from watching these primates, and we are primates. It doesn't matter how highfalutin we think we are, how intellectual, how educated we are, still primate beings, wired genetically very similarly to them. So, one of the most astounding things we can do to understand ourselves as a species is to understand the behavior of mammals. And I love what you said about the smile. There is so many normalized responses that we have to hide what we truly feel. But what I'm getting from this conversation with you so far is that you invite people, whether you know it or not, because of your vulnerable, authentic truth. You invite people to do the same. You invite people to drop the facade and the posturing and all of that stuff, and just to be where they are. That's a phenomenal power. It's a phenomenal gift that you have. And so I really extend that to everybody who is listening. Take this moment just within yourself to meet yourself where you are, without your facade, without your mask. Who are you then? When you don't have to posture, who are you then? I remember being taught as a little girl, I remember being taught, Dr. Joe, isn't this silly? I remember being taught that I couldn't hold my mug like this because it's not how ladies hold their mug. And if we were very posh, the pinky would come up. And I would always think, but I really like, and this was such a silly thing, wasn't it? I really like holding my mug like this. And so today I really do this. But I was taught, and I know that so many of us were conditioned. Whenever we use the word taught, we can actually exchange it for the word conditioned. I was conditioned to sit in a certain way, to say certain things, to posture my body in a certain way around different, and it would change according to different individuals. I mean, we think we're clever by the time we graduate school. Before we start school, we're bloody geniuses because we've already learned from our parents how to behave, when to behave in all of these pre-programmed, preconditioned ways. So you are taking all of that away. Love
Well,
it.
that's what I'm hoping to do, because I think that we need
You
to
are.
start, even before birth. We need to start even at conception with different attitudes.
Mm,
Because
mm,
to me, it's all about unconditional love all the way through.
mm,
Because that's the guide. And when I say unconditional love, I'm not talking about human love here. I could because in my understanding is when human love gets out of the way, then unconditional love comes through. It's a different thing, really. It's soul love. And I think more and more people are starting to understand this. That my understanding of human love is basically about possession and
mm,
emotional attachment.
mm.
You know,
Yeah.
and that poem, by Khalil Gibran, the prophet, your children are not your
Mm,
children. They come
mm,
through you, not from
mm,
you. And that means so much to me now because I think that we're almost we're seen as property in a lot of the cases. I mums and dads own their children. And I'm not blaming mums and dads at all now because that's been passed on through eons of time. You know, and I think I can see kids now as being their own seeds, and the job of parents now is just to water and feed, right, and guide in a cautious way, not to force people. You know, I was brought up in an environment where it was Roman Catholic, Irish Roman Catholic. It was very fearful. It was hard working, and my mum and dad worked like hell. But they had certain ideas and certain principles and traditions that were passed down to them that clearly didn't work for me, you know. But I tried like mad because I didn't want to upset my mother particularly. I tried like mad to listen and to act upon everything that she told me to do because I didn't want to upset her. And I can see that until I was 38 years of age, I basically was living my mum's life. I was living all her resentments. I was living all her fears and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to be horrible here against
I
mums or
know.
dads.
I
It's
know.
just what I've learned about me that it was only at 38 years of age that I started to disentangle myself from everybody else's ideas on how to live. And I was reborn, if you like, with a fresh slate to feel my way through life and to find out what I really liked at depth, what I really wanted to do, what I really felt enjoyable and enthusiastic about. And that's what I've tried to do now. My thing is, they call me in Texas, apparently, they call me Dr. Lightheart. Couldn't be further from the truth because I'm a miserable bugger, really, But no, I'm like, on the one side, there's a deadly serious side of me. But
Mm,
on the other side, I'm a joker, in the spirit of Heyoka, really. That's what I've been told quite a lot, really. And I'm helping people to first of all understand how the recording that's been driving their behavior wasn't
mm,
theirs anyway, you know. And so I'm helping them to sort of clear the tape and to realize that within them is an essential soul self with its own enthusiasm, its own vibration, and its own purpose for being.
mm,
And that's the thing that animates them, whether it be an animus or an anima or an animum. That's called non-binary now, whether it's already unified. To try and tune into that, metaphorically decapitate themselves, take the head off, throw that away because it's in the long-term memory that all this nonsense is. So to live without memory or beyond memory and just work from a feeling that emerges from their heart. I don't know whether that's making sense, but
Yeah, something that you've just said now just really kind of struck a chord with me about memory. So many people that I know have spoken about the loss of memory as if it's like this common ascension symptom. So tell us about that, because what you've just said now is quite astounding, and it's helping me to connect something.
yeah, we have a short-term memory and a long-term memory, and it's a bit like when you're learning to drive a car with a gear stick, and you put it into first gear, then the second gear. Initially, you have to consciously be aware of doing that. But after
Hmm.
the time and after repeated behavior, repeated actions, it then removes itself from our consciousness and becomes an automatic reaction.
Mm.
So when we get in a car, the environment then brings in our automatic driving responses. Then the problem is, if we're taught wrongly, we don't know that because we're just stuck in an automatic pattern. The idea would be is to consciously be able to step back and to sort of discern, is this working for me now? Right. So that's the first thing we do is it's very it's not difficult to explain, really. It's about pattern matching. So in various environmental conditions, we automatically respond to the conditions that we learned. Okay, so far?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, so then when we realize it's not working for us, we have to take the opposite action in order to cancel that one out. So there's almost like a still point where it cancels out.
Mm.
And then when those two cancel out, there's like a blank bit or a still space. Now, here's the trick. If you don't do anything there and just sit with it, what will happen
Mm.
then is your soul will come through based
I
upon
like
its
that.
own programming, right,
Mm.
which we set before we come here, and the soul takes over. So, in a way, we balance out our left hemisphere and our right hemisphere because
Mm.
the left hemisphere wants to turn left, the right
Yes.
hemisphere wants to turn right. They're mostly in a sort of state of constant warfare, right?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when the left gets its own way, there's always a bit thinking maybe I should have gone the other way. Do you
Mm.
see what I mean? So there's always doubt there. Now,
Yeah.
when we can cancel out those two sides of the yin and the yang, and the Ida and the Pingala, or whatever you want to call these polarities,
Mm.
when the polarities stop, there's like a coherent state that opens a gate to the soul to allow it to come through and express itself. And we can do that by using this heart rate variability. And what happens then is we transcend our memory and we work directly from the soul, which doesn't require a memory. It just works. This is the word I
Mm.
mentioned to you before. It works extemporaneously.
Mm.
And that means it doesn't need a script to live its life.
Oh,
It doesn't need a program. It just
yeah.
needs the feeling of love and enthusiasm and joy and all
Mm.
those emotions associated with loving kindness. I feel
Mm.
like the Pope here tonight. I might bless everybody. Bless you all in memory.
God, aren't we privileged? Wow. I'm having a real wow moment here because, like I said, so many people that I know have got so called memory problems and they're going, oh my God, I'm losing my memory. I can't remember anything. But there's a perfection in that. There really is a perfection in what's going on for so many people. And I love what you just said now about the memory being the script. Now, if we lose the script, because I'll tell you what, I've worked with people for enough years to know they will not voluntarily give up the script of their life. But if you can't remember the script, you're free.
Yeah. And that's how
Wow.
alcohol works, isn't it? Temporarily disconnects you from the script. Right.
Ah,
But then what happens is because all that repressed and fearful stuff that comes from your personal unconscious and even your collective unconscious, it comes up. And that's why in me, I was horrendously violent when I was drunk. And I'm being honest about it.
mm,
All this stuff from eons came up, right? But it
mm,
made me feel so good because in the release and the flush, I felt empowered. And then I would wake up the next morning and I would see the chaos and the fear around me. And I'd think, who's done this? Because I couldn't remember. And people used to say to me, surely you remember. And Kerry, I'm being honest now, I can't remember a lot of those things. And I know people who are in jail now because they've
mm.
committed offences in blackout. It's called blackout. It's not unconsciousness, it's in blackout. When they've actually done things and it was not written down on their memory banks, but they've
Wow.
committed crimes, they've hurt people, they've murdered people, all these sort of things, and they can't recall a single moment about it. And people used to say to me, "Surely you must remember." I swear to you, I
Yeah.
cannot remember. You know,
Mm,
and if anything ever came, because I went through a whole program of being honest and writing down every single person I hurt that I could remember, every single episode. And I've gone back to them where it wouldn't hurt them or harm them. I've gone back to them directly and I said, I am so, so sorry for what I've done. And I meant it, you know. And
mm,
that's all part of the humility and before humility, you
mm.
have to be humiliated because the God part of you is never
Huh.
humiliated. It's the ego that's humiliated. And to take steps in faith and trust, you've got to directly confront your own past. That's what frees you. And I went to people, and most people said, Joe, well, you're a lovely, lovely man, but when you were drunk, you were a pain in the backside and you were a real nuisance. but we're glad you're getting better. Good luck to you. But some people said to me, go, I nearly said a swear word then, go away, right? Never darken our door again, you imbecile. We never want to see it again. Now, I went back to the person that was guiding me and I said they were really upset about it. He said, Joe, it doesn't matter what their reaction is. It's the very fact that you've taken the action, you've confronted your fear, you've really apologized from the heart. You've been let go of that now. You've been freed from it. And that's what's happened to me. Every time I confronted a childhood fear, new energy flooded back into my system because I wasn't using some part of my psyche to defend myself. And so that's why empowerment to me means it's a real energy flush where you overcome. You see, I'm getting a big thing up my spine now talking about it. You overcome childhood conditions, childhood fears, and you grow up one step at a time, you know. And that's why I think that we're all being faced with this great shift that started to come through in 2012, which I've talked about on many occasions. Um, that's a cleansing energy that's basically bringing up from our collective and personal psyches. It's bringing up all the stuff that we've pushed down because we weren't able or capable to face it. So this is about facing yourself, not facing anybody else, facing yourself, taking the action, disentangle yourself from the chains that bind you, and go for. I hope this is being taped. This is quite good. This I might write a book
It's
on this.
bloody good. Yeah, you should do this. You should actually have some people interview you and perhaps get an audience.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, hi to everybody who is with us in on the live stream. I want to let you know, Dr. Joe, there's some beautiful comments coming in for you. Lynn Wheatman, hello from the UK. Hello, who's this? Anne. Anne is from Sweden. Christy Rui, hello, my darling. And Lynn Wheatman says in the beginning, she says, I haven't heard of you, Dr. Joe. So isn't this lovely that people are getting to know you who've never had the opportunity before? And then, of course, there are those who are your diehard fans and who have seen you before. Irina Costa says, always fun and a pleasure to see and hear you, Doc. Hello from Lynn Marie. Sue Baxter Fitz. Hello, darling. Denise Devlin. Oh, beautiful compliment. Thank you, sweetheart. And Terry J. Willett says, love to all. Hello, Pia. It's great that you're with us. Cheryl Saunders was sending out a message of thanks to you for telling your story. It's a very touching story. Marie Sutcliffe, hello. Good evening to you too. Amanda Henning, hi. And we've got, Grace Savannah Thomas says, this is why some parents are autonomously unschooling their kids at home. Now, my darling, Grace Savannah Thomas, I'm with you. I have 3 such people in my home, and it is, as far as I'm concerned, the only way to go right now. Deanna Jean, hi, so good that you're with us. Hello, Kelly Bird. And we've got a couple of comments there that were in the moment. There's a comment there that says, please will you repeat that? But I don't know where that was. So sorry, I can't repeat that. Hello, wonderful Rosie Neal. Great that you're with us. So there are so many people. Some know you, some don't. Either way, they're absolutely touched by your honesty. And the reason that it touches people is because it is contagious in the best possible way. It never fails to amaze me how people become heart-based in the presence of heart-based people. And sometimes, Dr. Joe, sometimes they're only heart-based in the presence of somebody who will meet them there. And then they go back to their facade that we spoke about earlier, you know. But I think many people who are here on the show are those who live at least the majority of their life in that heart space. I'm really interested in what you said earlier about the brain. We've spoken a little bit about memory. Can you help us a little bit about the brain? What is it with the brain? Do you measure brain waves? Do you measure brain frequency? What is your particular work with the brain heart connection?
Well, I mean, what my understanding is that most people are living in what's called a beta brainwave state.
Yeah.
It's a high frequency state, and it's normally associated with consciousness. but
Mm.
also getting on with stuff really. And
Mm.
because we're so busy and we're so distracted, and whether that's a sort of a manipulated thing or not, you know,
Mm. Mm.
most people are kept busy so that
Yeah.
they can't sit still long enough
Yeah.
to actually sink deeper into what's called
Mm.
alpha and theta state. I mean, delta state is it's a deep state of meditation, but it's mostly the state when people go when they're completely and deeply in sleep. It's a resting and recuperative state. So
Which one was that? Theta.
that's no theta's a sort of middle one. That's delta.
Ah, thank
So
you.
so it's beta, alpha, theta, delta. But there's
Mm.
a gamma state as well, which is a high. It's a rapid thinking state, but it's also associated with focus as well. And when you get into deeper meditation, in a paradoxical way, you go higher into some brain waves that gives you focus like a laser light. And
Mm.
Buddhist monks, you know, monks who've been meditating for a long time, they have very, very high gamma frequencies and stuff like that. So it's been shown now that if you breathe in a certain way and you use positive emotion, then you can
Mm.
get your heart into a state of what's called coherence.
Mm.
Generally speaking, that represents a state of alpha theta. And in alpha theta, it means that your consciousness is objective. You're not emotionally engaged to anything. Because as soon as you emotionally engage to something in a defensive way, you go back into beta and everything becomes tense as well. There's
Mm.
words here like we go into like an egocentric contraction. All that means is we get tense and we're just looking for an escape route. When you're in that state, you can't think creatively. You can only think defensively and short termly.
Mm.
So many people, the majority of people, unfortunately, on the planet are in that state now.
Mm.
You know, and so if you can, some people need to get really, really ill, like myself, to understand that there are solutions. And the
Mm.
solution is
Yeah.
not out there, Kerry. It's
Yeah.
not outlook, you know. We need to stop looking outwards so much and start looking inwards. I say stop expecting and start inspecting. So you've almost
Mm.
like got to take your glasses on, turn them the other way around and look inwards.
Mm.
Because from what I've learned is what you're looking for is under your nose. It's that
Mm.
far under your nose there,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the secret to everybody's problems, as far as I'm concerned, right, is in their heart of hearts.
Mm.
And what I'm teaching people, I've got a friend called Paul Luftenegger. He's a singer
Mm.
songwriter from Canada,
Mm.
and there's a song that really resonates with me. It's called "Put Your Hands on Your Heart," right, and say I love you. And you're actually saying I love you to that frightened child within yourself, you
Mm.
know. And if that's working with the inner child, then so be it. But if it's
Mm.
working with that emotional part of our psyche that's
Mm.
still immature and insecure, then the energy, if it goes inwards, it's
Mm.
almost like reparenting this
Mm.
frightened child, you know. And I
Yeah.
can see now that when the heart gets into this balance of masculine and feminine coherence, the
Mm. Mm.
sacred union in, and then this golden child starts to emerge. I have all these pictures in my mind of these things,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
and this golden child starts to come up, and then it starts to teach or show mum and dad the way to
Mm.
live life. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
love of that child. And this is the thing, it's our soul self that comes up and expresses the self. And it basically says, follow me, I'll show you the best way to go, you know. And
Mm.
that's what I'm tending to do. And do I
Mm.
still have fears? Hardly ever now. I'm more arrogant and prideful than fearful these days. You know, it's gone the other way around, you know. Because I think sometimes when I'm saying big words, I think, whoa, that was a good one, that joke, you know.
Well, I tell you what, one of the things that you said that I just love was about humility. That before we become humble, very often we need to be humiliated
Yeah.
so that we become humble. I love that. I love that. And I think it's so absolutely true.
So if you
Um,
find yourself being embarrassed, welcome
yeah,
it. It's all
yeah,
part of the flushing. When you go flushed
yeah,
in the face, it's part of a flushing thing coming out, you know. But
yeah.
if you sort of feel it and then you dive and you duck and dive and start to tell fibs and try and, you know, that's
Mm,
going back into an old defensive childish pattern of trying to defend yourself,
mm,
you know. It's
mm,
called owning up, isn't it really? Yes, I have done that. Yes, I'm
mm,
sorry, I've made a mistake. It's really difficult. But
mm,
once you start to realize that the truth will set you free if you tell the truth, really, you know.
mm. Yeah. And it's the truth to yourself. It's
Yeah.
the truth to
Yeah.
yourself. You know, this is so cheesy what I'm going to say, but it's something that really touched me. I don't normally watch TV and I certainly don't watch movies, but I did many years ago watch the Eminem story, and I think it was called 8 Mile. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the movie was called 8 Mile. And there's this one scene in it that I remember because it touched my heart so deeply. And it's where Eminem is standing on stage and he's rapping and he's the underdog. And as the underdog, all of the other big dogs are putting him down, and this is how the game is won. And he just has this moment, he stands on stage and he becomes completely honest. And he says to them, obviously in rap form, that's his art and his mastery. He says to them, yeah, I am poor and I do live in a trailer park and I am trash and my mother does whatever. And he took it all away from them. He
Yeah.
took their ammunition away from them. And it was this wonderful moment, you know, where the audience felt this wonderful sense of, yeah, you tell him. But don't we all secretly wish that we could expose ourselves in the same way? Because if we did, we would have no pretenses. We would have nothing that we need to hide from.
Yeah.
What freedom that would be for us.
And I fortunately I've been able to do that now. I've
Yeah.
I don't feel, and I might be wrong, but I don't feel there's anything in me at all that's trying to hide. If
Mm,
anybody wants to know anything, and I feel that it will be useful to tell them, I'll
mm,
tell them.
mm,
And sometimes when I disclose things about my past, people
mm,
don't want to know me, and I don't care. You see, because I want to know me, right? Because I'm
mm,
not trying. I don't want to don't want to fool myself anymore, and I don't want to fool anybody else. So if there's anything else that's in me that needs to come up, I'm happy for it to come up because I've got a friend who I can disclose anything to at all because I'm not afraid anymore of anything that I've done in the past. Because,
mm,
and this is a cheesy saying coming up now, because with the resources I had at the time, I couldn't have done anything
mm,
different. With the knowledge I had and the resources to hand and the energy and the information, I couldn't have acted in any other way.
mm.
And that's why I realized
Yeah.
once I started to see that and let myself off the hook, everything started to change. But the most important thing is it's not to lead with everything and go out there. There's simple, straightforward ways of doing it is find somebody where you can offload to who's not going to jump in with any of their personal advice. Like when you're sort of going through a breakup and things, and you
Mm,
tell your mates, and they come in with, you want to tell her where to go, and she's done this, and you don't need that. You just need a listening ear and an open heart.
mm,
And I can see that the Roman Catholic confession that was probably set up for that purpose
mm.
until they started
Wow.
to say you're a sinner and you need to do
Yeah.
10 Hail Marys and 25 Our Fathers. So
Yeah.
the point is, I do have a mate now who knows me better than anybody else in my whole life. And if anything came up from my past, I could just ring him up to say, so and so, this is coming up. And he'd just say to me, anything else? No. Okay, good night. So that's how it's, to me,
Wow.
it's called shaming the devil. I need to tell somebody else because that's the step of humility. I can talk to God or spirit or angels and I can say, look what I've just remembered, but it doesn't have the same impact of when you share it with another human being. That's
Mm,
so important, really.
mm. To not be judged, man, to not be judged. How beautiful is that? There's a question here from Grace Savannah Thomas, and the question is, please can you ask Dr. Joe if he thinks the 12 steps supported his spiritual awakening, and if he thinks everybody would benefit from a 12-step program. Did you do a 12-step program,
Yeah, my honest
Joanne?
answer is I think that the 12-step program of recovery would help the whole world, right?
Mm,
Because it was never about alcohol. It
mm,
was just about the soul's condition and the fact that it was encased in all this sort of defensiveness. And what the
mm,
12-step recovery program showed me was, right, that you pick your own concept of a higher power. Nobody
mm,
tells you what to think. I was brought up in Roman Catholicism. I spent some time as an 11-year-old training to be a priest in the early stages and all that. So I had a lot of Catholicism fed to me. I've sort of disregarded that, but the underlying message is the same for all the major religions as far as I see it. That love is the answer, right? And you see, so to me, I think everybody would benefit by going through a 12-step recovery program. It's not a religion, it's to do with spirituality, and that's a completely and utterly different thing. The 12-step program, as I practiced it, it reconnected me back to my soul, and it shows me how to hang on and keep in contact with my soul on a daily basis. So the answer to your question is, and thank you, is yes, absolutely, definitely.
There you go. Thank you so much. A question from Lynn Wheatman, who says, do you think that it's got something to do? This isn't about the 12 step. This is just about being the truth of who you are, being vulnerable and authentic. And Lynn says, do you think it's also got something to do with age and experience, how you can be yourself? She goes on to say young people have got a lot of social pressure. So she's wondering if it's easier that you're older. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's an element to that, but I don't think that growing older, right, would have stopped my alcoholism, because
Yeah.
the problem wasn't human age or
Yeah.
belly button age. The problem
Mm.
was my emotional age, and I
Yeah.
was blocked in my emotional childishness or childhood
Yeah.
or whatever. So I think the answer to that is people who haven't signed up for such a difficult soul contract, can maybe
Mhm.
grow and develop, and
Mm.
and grow as they age, and their
Mm.
human, physical, and their emotional grow together. I think that's how it's supposed to be. If you listen to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all those
Yes.
things,
Yeah.
the idea would be for to grow in both those physical and psychological components at the same time. But
Mm.
mine was so rammed down with oppression and suppression and repression and sensitivity that it needed something much more powerful than that. So the answer is yes and no. I'm sorry to be so obtuse.
Yeah, I will agree with you though. I think it's very much about the individual. I personally, I don't think it's about the age at all. But I do a lot of facilitation of inner child work, Dr. Joe, and this is something that I often say to people who I'm working with, that when the inner child is wounded, and let's just say hypothetically that that child is severely wounded, traumatized, whatever it might be, at the age of 8, that's it. That's where your emotional developmental growth stops, at the 8-year-old. So you're then a 38-year-old or a 68-year-old in the world, presenting yourself with the 8-year-old's emotional maturity. And so the amazing thing about that is it helps people to become very compassionate with themselves, because then they realize, wow, I've been sending my 8-year-old into my business meetings or into my everyday life, into my relationships. I've been sending an 8-year-old to do the bidding of an adult. How unfair is that? And then they get to reclaim and relove the 8-year-old. And then the 8-year-old can start the process of growing up. So often, I'm sure you would have heard it. Didn't people say to you, oh, grow up
Yeah.
when you were, yeah, they do, because we can recognize that a person's behavior is somewhere emotionally stunted. We just lack the compassion to understand why that is. Um, but I definitely feel that a lot of it's got to do with where the inner child is, as opposed to where what the adult years are. Um, Dr. Joe, there's so many amazing things that you've shared with us. You've touched a little bit on memory, you've touched a little bit on brain. I really loved hearing about brain waves. I've been working with binaural beats, so I was very interested in what you said about that. Do you think binaural beats are
Yeah, it
a
depends which
valid?
ones you get. Really, I got a set many years ago, and I go running with them. Because
Mm,
I do a lot of running to clear my mind and stuff like that. And I was
right.
working with binaural beats as well, and
Yeah.
it definitely had an impact upon me.
Yeah.
It was ones based on Buddhist chanting and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I'm still an experimenter, so I'll try things. The only thing
Right.
I don't take now is alcohol or mind
Yeah.
altering ingestibles. I don't do any of that now. I'm sort
Yeah.
of real, raw, rough, and raw authentic. So I
Mm,
feel that I've got to use my own inner pharmacy to get the feelings that emerge, So that's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool. Love
binaural
that.
beats, yeah, music is so powerful. It's so powerful, and I like. I'm still like an adolescent on the inside, so I'm just growing slowly. But I like Tiesto, and all the Ibiza sounds. I love all that
Did
sort
you
of stuff.
really?
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
just
God.
love it.
I can't
And people
imagine.
think, they say to me, "What are you listening to?" Because they know where I'm coming from. Is it
Mm.
is it some sort of meditation music? I say, "Well, yes. Would you like to listen to it?" I'm like, "It's like this." So I've got Tiesto on while I'm running, and there's certain songs. It's very powerful. The
Yeah.
slower ones, I just slow down and go with it, and then the fast
Mm.
ones, I can feel myself speeding up. So
Yeah.
music, whatever. The idea in my mind is help the person to find out what works for them.
Oh,
Don't tell them what's going to work
yeah.
for them because we don't know.
Mm.
They've got to. This is a journey of self-discovery. So when people say, "What should I do next?" all I go like that is, I tap the heart and say, "Ask your heart. Ask your heart." Because the answer you're looking for is in there. It's
Mm.
not here. Because Kerry, if you suggest an action that somebody needs to take and it goes wrong, you're
Mm.
to blame.
Mm. I agree. I agree. And it's a huge responsibility to take,
Yeah.
to give somebody advice. We don't really realize that, do we? We give advice so freely. Um, but it is a huge karmic responsibility to take. I had a talk with Lisa Transcendence Brown. It was an off air talk, and it was really wonderful. And one of the things that she said to me was how she, and I can't even remember the words that she used, something to do with clearing karma on every dimensional level. She said, she had to go through her third dimensional, fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional self and clear karma, clear karma, clear karma. And I never really got the opportunity to go back and ask about this. And the next day it just hit me. And I went, oh my God, Kerry, everybody who you have ever given advice to, even if you came from love, even if you came from the best place, in the giving of advice, you create a karmic tie to that person. Could be a stranger that you don't even remember anymore. You've created, and you've got to resolve and dissolve all of those karmic ties before you can actually liberate yourself from a particular way of being. I tell you what, it was such an awesome eye opener. So I've become the one who people roll their eyes at now, because they'll say, Kerry, what shall I do? And I won't tell them to put their hand on their heart, but I'll give them my own version of that, and they'll go, oh, as if to say, like, but come on,
Yeah.
let me give my power away to you, and I just don't want it. I
I
just don't
couldn't
want it.
agree more. They say to me, "You're a doctor. You should know." And I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah." I say to them, "I've got no idea what I should be doing in the next moment. So don't be asking me. Why don't you go in there and
Mm.
feel your way through for yourself?" Because to
Feel your
me,
way
as
through.
you've
Yeah.
just said, sovereignty, this is all about reclaiming our sovereignty now. And what does
Mm.
that mean? It means 100% responsible, not 99.9. 100% responsible for doing
Mm.
what we like, doing what we feel,
Mm.
but accepting full responsibility for the choices that we make. And that's
Yeah.
called dignity. That's being allowed to make your own
Mm.
mistakes and to find out your own solutions. I think that we can facilitate environments where people need to take their own actions, but you
Mm.
can't permanently do for
Mm.
somebody what they've eventually got to do for themselves.
Mm.
You know, but I
Absolutely.
agree. I mean, I've listened to a lot of Lisa Transcendence Brown stuff, and I think it's great. And she explains how these energies are coming in and recoding and decoding and
Mm.
disentangling us, and the DNA is changing back
Yeah.
to its original form. And
Yeah.
it's that original form now that's causing all sorts of physical manifestations. Maybe one day your liver's getting worked on, then your kidneys, then your
Mm.
heart. And if you jump in and go to the doctors and get some chemical for it, this is just my view, because this is
Mm.
what I tend to do for myself.
Yeah.
I settle into my heart first, and I say to my heart, is this something that I need to go and see a medical doctor for? And I get no. Right, just go through and accept, let it work through you. And I'm not stupid, or I'm cautious
Mm.
about things, so I listen in deeply, and I'll say, look, this is really causing me a lot of pain now. So do me a favor. This is working with my soul. Do me a favor. Take it away for half a day, and then I'll know it's you. And you know what? Honestly, the pain goes completely. I think, okay. And then half a day later, it's back again. I think, okay, do your worst. I know you're working on me. So that's how I do it. And, as I say, I'm not opposed to medication when it's used at the right dose, at the right time, for the right condition. But when people ask me, should I take these tablets? I'll say, don't be asking me. Work with your intuition, work with your health professional, and make your own mind up. So that's where I'm up to. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm only explaining how I do things. Whether people listen to that or not, that's up to them.
Yeah. I'm very grateful. I was first introduced to transpersonal psychology many years ago. I studied the work of Dr. Stan Groff, and it really led me on a path of self-discovery, which truly I was already on, but it allowed me to hold conversations with people that were non-linear and non-literal. So, for example, I find it incredibly empowering when a person says, oh, for example, oh, I've broken up with my boyfriend. I'm in heartbreak. One of the amazing things, and everybody listening, you can do this with yourself. Instead of giving that person advice, I'll ask them, what does it feel like in a picture? If you could put a shape to it, what shape is it? And they might say, it's a triangle. What color is the triangle? It's blue. What texture is it? It's furry. Good. What does it need? And now you can really help a person and yourself to process through things when you take the linear, literal, left brain orientated stuff out of the equation and really just be in the unknowing, feeling world. Even if you're working with something as abstract as a blue furry triangle, you know,
Yeah.
what you'll find, what that blue furry triangle might need is just for you to touch it and hold it. It might need for you to whisper a few words. But the point here is when it stops making linear logical sense, you're probably onto something really good. So you should follow that through.
I agree with you, and I think also that individuals have to come up. They ask their own questions. You can start off with a seed question, but
Mm,
like for example, you say you feel trapped. What sort of trapped is it?
mm,
And they say, well, what do you mean? I say, what sort of trap? But it's sort of, it feels like I'm stuck in glue. What sort of
mm,
glue is it? You see, and they have to go
mm,
deeper into their psyche and use their
mm,
own metaphors to make their own meanings
mm,
for themselves. It mightn't mean anything to us, but it's called clean questioning, this, or clean communication, and it really is about people going deeper into the depths of their own meaning making. And as you say, it's a
mm,
sort of it's a non-linear
mm,
approach, and
mm,
then there's all sorts of feeds. I see now, this is where I'm up to now with the neuroscience side of things, is the heart to me represents the Christ.
mm,
And I think that there's 12 cranial nerves that are actually attached to the heart, and to me those 12 cranial nerves represent the disciples. Right, I'm not a Christian person now, I'm just using that. So
mm,
we've got the Christ and the 12 cranial nerves.
mm,
Now, to me, each disciple has got a different frequency. Each frequency is a different stream of consciousness. Each stream of consciousness has a different skill or ability or a gift associated to it. I honestly see that this shift that's coming through is opening up these portals of intelligence, and that every human being on the planet has got access now to these 12 different dimensions of gifts or skills or abilities. You know, there's somebody called Howard Gardner, and he got up to 8 or 9 intelligences. But I'm trying to link now the mind and the body and the actions and the freedom and the potential of all human beings. And how do you do it? You put your hands on your heart
mm.
and you
Yeah.
breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, stop. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, stop. And you say, I love you. And I
Mm,
think that that's what's happening. As the Christ opens and starts to express itself,
mm,
everything comes back online.
mm.
I've had this
Absolutely.
12 thing for years and years and years,
Mm,
as far back as I can remember, So 12 is a very special number for me, really.
mm. Wow. Well, I have loved every moment of this conversation, and I could keep on for another hour, and I know that we will. I'd love for you to come back. I'd love to carry on this conversation. I thank you so much for daring to heal, for daring to recover, for daring to be the truth of who you are so courageously and so openly, sharing it with everybody in the way that you do. It empowers everybody listening to do the same. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Joe.
Kerry. Lovely to meet you, and hopefully
Ah,
speak to you again
amazing.
soon.
Absolutely, we sure will. Everybody, please do go and have a look at the events page on the samhadispeaks.com website. Samhadispeaks.com, click on the events page. That's when you will know when wonderful speakers like Dr. Joe are with me. So I look forward to seeing you soon. Lots of
Bye,
love,
darling. Thanks very
everybody.
much. Bye bye.
Bye for now.